Well, hello again, Glenelm Youth Group. It's good to be with you here this morning. I hope you're enjoying your summers, getting outside, enjoying the beautiful summer weather, still being safe and responsible, keeping the appropriate social distance and so on. But I hope you're finding lots of joy and spending time with the people who are important to you. Summer is a wonderful season. And normally, we would be able to gather together at Clearview Camp, which is why I'm wearing, as you can see, my official staff shirt from camp last summer. And I'm feeling a little bit sad at just this time, because this is about the time when we would be gathering together at Clearview for Teen Week 2020. And of course, we're not able to do that this summer. So I am feeling a little bit sad about that. And I wanted to kind of get together. So even if we can't be together in body, we can be together in mind and in spirit. And spend a little bit of time thinking about and doing some of the things that we would have talked about and done together at Clearview. So I'm hoping that we can do that together over these next few minutes, and that even in the coming days, our minds and our spirits might be connected by this common movement toward this. This is going to be our theme, or this would have been our theme for the week had we been able to gather at Clearview. Kind. Growing in ordinary goodness. Now, if I could take just a few minutes to share about what that theme means to me and why I think it's important, and how we might begin to live it out through the real day-to-day actions of our lives. So let's just take a look at each of those key words from our title, kind, growing in ordinary goodness. We'll take a look at each of those key words in turn. First, kind, as in being kind or living in kindness toward those around you. Do you know someone who is exceptionally kind? What sorts of kind actions do you see them performing? Would you consider yourself to be a kind person? What does it mean to be kind? Seems like the answer to that question should be fairly obvious. We all know kindness when we see it, and conversely, we recognize unkindness fairly easily. I think of those famous words of Jesus, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you," or in maybe more familiar language, treat others in the same way you would like to be treated. This has come to be known as the Golden Rule, a standard of behavior which is revered and upheld in all times and in all places. At the heart of the idea of kindness, indeed, the very root of the word kind, is that of kin, meaning closely related, of the same, two of a kind. In other words, embedded in the notion of kindness is the recognition that you and the other are one and the same. There is an indelible connection between you. You treat them as you would want to be treated because you are more or less the same, deserving of the same dignity and respect that are the inherent right of every human being. Sadly, when we consider examples of unkindness, and there are a few to choose from history, acts of abuse and oppression and violence, when we consider these examples, we often find underlying these acts as motivation and justification, a refusal to acknowledge the humanity and inherent dignity of the victims. And I would also like to add the inherent dignity of those non-human creatures who might also be victims. There can be many reasons for unkindness: competition and scarcity, selfishness and personal ambition. But many of these include within them a lack of concern for the needs of the other and an inability or an unwillingness to empathize, to understand what it would be like to live in the place of the other. Kindness and empathy are deeply intertwined. If you cannot fathom or could not really care what it's like to be living in another man or woman's shoes, then you will likely find it difficult and unnecessary to go out of your way to do good toward them. Conversely, if you are moved by empathy and concern for the other, then you will find it easier to act kindly toward them in ways that enrich the quality of their lives. So that is what we mean by kind. But the question remains, does kindness matter? And if so, why? Why might it be important for us to think about and to practice kindness at this time in particular? Why now? Clearly, there are many examples in the world around us right now of people not being kind to one another. And this is nothing new. It's a constant, reoccurring theme in our human story. Some might claim that things are getting worse. They might be right, but I'm not sure. In any case, I think it's kind of pointless to sit around arguing about whether the world is better or worse than in past times. Better to simply get on with making your world just that little bit better through simple acts of kindness right now. But it needs to be asked, why bother? Why not just look after ourselves? It's time for you to get ahead. Isn't it just naive and foolish to care too much about others? Maybe. But maybe not. Maybe our lives are enriched by kindness, not just received, but given. Maybe this is what makes life worth living, to love and be loved by others. Jesus said as much. Love God, love people. That's what the everlasting life is all about. So I'm going to show you my cards, okay? I'm an open book. I think kindness is mighty important. With 3 young kids under our roof, you can imagine that we hear our share of children's music. Raffi, Fred Penner, 2 of my all-time favorites. Many of their songs are just dripping with the message of kindness, of being good to others. So can we conclude that this is just childish sentimentality? Or might we need to acknowledge that there is something profoundly important, indeed truly mature, in this supposedly childish music? More and more, I believe it's the latter. Kindness is a message we ought never grow out of. We would do well to heed the words of those children's songs and to put them into practice. Yeah, we still talking about practice. If anyone hears these words of mine and puts them into practice, Jesus once said, they are like a wise man or woman who built their house on a rock. On the other hand, he or she is a fool who doesn't take kindness seriously. So, we ought to grow in kindness. Growing. Our next key word from our title. Growth, as you well know, is one of our highest values in the Glen Elm Youth Group. It is something we talk about a lot. It is something we strive for, to grow, to learn, to evolve, to develop in positive ways. Is it possible to grow more kind? I absolutely believe so. Practicing acts of kindness holds the potential to reshape us, even affecting the ways we think and feel. Isn't that amazing? We can practice our way to more kind feelings. And this is important because sometimes I don't really feel like being kind. Have you experienced this? It's hard to be kind sometimes, especially to those we don't consider to be very much like us, to those who have been unkind to us, to those who we might consider enemies. Okay, who finds it hard to love their enemies? So it's not just me. And in that case, if it's so hard, why don't we just leave them to the side and focus on loving those who love us? Wait a minute. Jesus once said, if you do that, you're not doing much. Everyone finds it easy to love their friends. But I am calling you to more, to love your enemies. And that's going to take some work. We might need to practice this for a while before it becomes second nature. And will all that effort be worth it, I wonder? What do we stand to gain by doing what Jesus calls us to here? I believe the answer to that is the life that is truly life. On the other hand, what do we risk by not doing what he says? Well, to go back to the analogy, a house that comes crashing down. Hatred destroys. It destroys both them and us. For all who draw the sword will die by the sword, Jesus would go on to say at another time, perpetuating the age-old cycles of hatred and violence, which have been turning and churning away from the beginning of human history, will only lead to more misery. That is the wide road that leads to destruction, as Jesus once described. Better to undo the violence, the cycle of violence and hatred, with creative acts of kindness. That is the narrow way which leads to life. And in talking about that, we're talking about an extraordinary transformation, a change of mind, repentance for the world and for ourselves. How are we going to get to a world and to a human heart that is less characterized by hatred and more by kindness? I think there's only one way, taking one step at a time. Maybe you've heard the story of the beach and the starfish and the boy and the old man. Okay, if I remember correctly, the story goes like this. An old man comes to a beach, and this beach is covered in starfish that have washed up upon the shore at high tide, and then the tide has gone back out and left all of these starfish there, basically to die because they're now out of the water and exposed on the beach. And so he's sort of a little bit sad to see all of this death around him. And looking off down the beach, the old man sees this young boy who's just picking up one starfish after another and tossing it into the water. Now, the old man is sort of curious at this and wanders down the beach and asks the boy, like, what are you doing? You can't possibly hope to help all of these starfish. There's thousands of them here, and you're just throwing one at a time back into the water. Why not just give it up? It's too big of a task. The old man, he's lived a long life. He's maybe feeling a little bit jaded about life, right? A little more pessimistic than optimistic. And in this story, the boy's response is interesting. He says, well, I can't hope to help all of these starfish, but I can help that one, and I can help that one. Every little step that we take toward love and kindness is a step in the right direction. It is a step to a world at peace. And it's a step worth taking, even if we can't fix all things at once. I think we ought to take just that next step down that path of peace. Don't freeze for fear that this task is too big or is beyond you. Because I think this extraordinary transformation that we're talking about, it happens through the ordinary acts of ordinary people. Ordinary. A third key word from our title. Again, this extraordinary transformation happens when ordinary people cooperate with God's free and ubiquitous, big word, okay? Ubiquitous just means everywhere. It's like McDonald's or television sets. It's everywhere. That's God's Spirit, free and ubiquitous. The great connector, as Richard Rohr, my favorite author, calls her. The great connector, the Holy Spirit. This extraordinary transformation happens when people cooperate with God's Spirit. This transformation will not require anything that we do not already have at our disposal. Nothing but a willingness to join the movement of God's Spirit to restore peace and wholeness to all creation and within every human heart. Don't try to push that river. Go with the flow. Jump in and wade down the river of goodness which endlessly flows from our God of grace, Father, Son, and Spirit. Oh my goodness. Goodness. Our final key word to explore. And it's one of those words, I feel, which has become so common that almost no one knows what it means anymore. Or maybe more accurately, its meaning seems so obvious that we all assume we're talking about the same thing when we say it. In which case, we might miss some of the nuance and depth of meaning that is bound up in the oh so common word, goodness. In my mind, goodness, like kindness, means much more than simply being nice. I once heard goodness defined in this way: not begrudging another existence. Okay, what on earth does that mean? Well, simply this. I'll put it in more simple terms. Letting others live. Live and let live, as the old saying goes. Not the James Bond theme. Live and let die. No, this is live and let live. In other words, God, the Creator, can be said to be good in the sense that God allows God's creatures to be what they are, to freely partake of the joy and the sorrow of existence. God's goodness makes space for others to exist. God throws a party and says, I want everyone to be able to join in the fun. So here's the crucial question at hand. How might we display goodness in the same way? How might we bear the image of our good God? By making space. By allowing others to be who they are. By being similarly open and inclusive. I think here about another famous parable of Jesus. It's found in Luke 14:15-24, if you want to look it up. A certain man was preparing a great banquet, Jesus said. And as the story goes, many people are invited to the party, but just as many excuse themselves for various reasons. Oh, I just got married, or oh, I just bought a car. Sorry, can't make it. Okay, said the host. Then extend the invitation even wider. Invite all those who no one would think to invite to a banquet. The blind, the lame, the poor. And don't stop there. Invite the foreigners, the outsiders, the social outcasts. I want my party full and rockin'. And those who turn me down have no idea the time they're going to miss. So what's the kernel of truth in this curious story? I think it's simply this. God's doors are wide open. There's a party going on and everyone's invited. If this story helps us to understand what God's kingdom is like, then apparently some of us are in for quite a shock at who we find sat across the table from us. God is shockingly inclusive. Enough to make many of us who like to play around at worthiness games, sort of sifting out who's welcome and who's not. It's going to make us uncomfortable. God wouldn't be good otherwise. I sincerely believe so. And for us to live in goodness, we need to practice a similar openness and inclusion. This goodness, I also believe, goes beyond mere tolerance. It doesn't stop at live and let live, which could be seen as passive, even subtly dismissive. You go your way, and I'll go mine, and let's hope that our paths never meet. Goodness is much more active, more concerned. Beyond live and let live could instead be stated as live and help flourish. God's goodness does this. And ours should too. Can you see how this goes much deeper than merely being nice? An inclusion of this sort also implies mounting a strong and courageous challenge to the powers of exclusion and oppression. Goodness is never nicely content and complicit with the status quo, but remains committed to building a true peace in which all can flourish. This is the task before us. Those who are truly kind, growing in ordinary goodness. So if I could do one more thing, I'd like to issue a challenge, a task for us all to engage in the coming days and weeks. This is called, I've called it, Kindness Bingo. And it's basically a piece of paper with squares on it, and in each of these squares is a unique challenge toward kindness, to display kindness in just real and practical ways, but not necessarily complicated, just simple things that you can do day in and day out that I think will be steps toward a more kind heart and a better world for all of us to live in. So let me just run through what each of those challenges or what each of the elements of that challenge are going to be. And my challenge to you in the coming weeks is that you would complete the bingo card. Okay, this is blackout bingo. You got to fill every space. There's 9 plus a bonus. Okay, so 10 items that I would like you to try to accomplish. Maybe before the summer's out, and we can have a little bit of conversation by email or social media or whatever it is. Let's keep each other up to date on how we're doing at this kindness challenge. Okay, so here are the items, the challenges that I'm putting to you. Number 1, intentionally smile at every stranger you meet during an outing. Okay, so maybe you're going to the grocery store, maybe you're going downtown, maybe you're going into town, wherever you might happen to be. Every stranger you meet on that outing, just smile at them and see what happens. Okay, number 2, give an unexpected compliment to someone you know well. You spend your life with lots of different people, and you might not, probably not, I'm not really in the habit of just giving out compliments unexpectedly, so give it a try. Okay, number 3, be exceptionally helpful around your house. It'd be great if my kids would take up this challenge. Never mind. Sometimes we all just need to be reminded to be helpful, to pay attention to the needs around us and to respond. So be exceptionally helpful around your house, even towards a brother or sister. I know some of you have those. For 1 whole day. Okay? Number 4, make a handmade gift to give to someone important to you. Fairly self-explanatory. Number 5, sincerely ask, how are you doing, to a close friend or family member, and then listen carefully as they answer. Now this one might be a little tricky because often we ask the question almost as just, it's just being nice, right? And sometimes people would respond just by saying, oh, yeah, I'm doing okay. So try to ask the question in a time and a place. And this is why you're asking also somebody who you know well, right? Because there's a trust built into that interaction. So you try to ask them in such a way that it actually draws a real response out of them. Not just, oh, yeah, things are good, but, well, either things are going awesome because this happened, or, things aren't going so great right now because I'm really having to deal with this. Hopefully you get a real response, and as you do, my challenge is to listen carefully and to respond as you are prompted by the Spirit, the great connector. Okay, where are we at? Maybe, what's this, 6? Lost track of the numbers. But here it is. Strike up a conversation with someone who you've never spoken with. Okay, so you just had a conversation in the previous challenge with a close friend or family member. Here's one where you're striking up a conversation, you're building a connection with somebody new, someone you've never talked to before. Number 7. Think about someone with whom you sharply disagree, or you disagree sharply. Okay, so think about who that might be. Could be somebody you know personally or not. Maybe it's some political figure or some celebrity or something like that. Okay, think about someone with whom you disagree. You don't feel very much like them, or you don't have very much in kind. Okay, now with that person in mind, your challenge is this: to discover one good thing about them every day for a week. And as you develop this growing list of good qualities or good characteristics, you're going to recite it once a day for the whole week. Okay, so just tell yourself the good things about this person that you really disagree with. I think that might be a good practice. Okay. Number 8, apologize for something you have failed to apologize for in the past. Maybe you have nothing. I highly doubt it. Okay. I've got a few things that I carry around. Apologies that I maybe should have made, but haven't. So your challenge is to pick one of those and make it right. Apologize for something you have failed to apologize for in the past. And then 9, finally, simply, but not simply, right? This is a challenging one. Pray for an enemy once a day for 1 week. And then your bonus, do an anonymous good deed for someone you do not know. And you could do that several times. Just start giving it out, giving those good deeds, making it rain, right? Okay, so anyways, there's your kindness challenge. This is what you would have been given if we had been at Clearview. We can't be there together in body, but we can be together in mind and in spirit. So I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen today. And I want to thank you for taking the time to practice these acts of kindness. And I want to wish you just a wonderful remaining time in your summer. And I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Blessings.